All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei, our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson Family of Am Yisroel, for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this year as a zechus for besuros tovos for Am Yisroel. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Steve and Teri Czinn, in honor of the birth of their granddaughter, Devorah Eliana Czinn, and the loving memory of Dr. Zinn's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim, Zechus Bracha, Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, besuros refuah sheleima for Rabin's cousin serving in the IDF, Benyamin Chaim Pesach, ben Musha Chana, and a commission of the Yahrzeit of Rabin's mother, Pesa Mira Bas Chaim. Zechus Bracha. Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gavant, in memory of Dr. Gavant's parents, Yakov Meir ben Moshe Leib, and Shena Bas Abba, Zechus Bracha. Dr. Behzad and Yemina Soufer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a refuah sheleima for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. And our Dr. Yomi sponsors for today, Sammy and Malka Esther Czinn, in commemoration of the 30th Yahrzeit of Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Bracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families Zeinachama, all of those who need a refuah should have one together. Kol Cholei Yisrael Baruch Hu Shneimers Hashem, return our hostages, b'shalom and b'karov, and our holy soldiers should be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedehem. Well, so with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, a really exciting and incredible daf out of us. Today's daf is Kuf Mem Zayin. We are starting 147. We are starting at the Mishnah on Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis 146b. Shchiv Mira Shekasav Kol Nechasav La'achir. So Shmuel is on his deathbed, and he goes ahead and he writes all of his property to someone else. Right? So Reuben's on his deathbed, writes all of his property to someone else. And what happened? The Shir Karka Kol Shehu. Now, in this case, he did something very interesting. The Shchiv Mira retained a piece of property for himself. So whereas normally we've been speaking about the case of a Shchiv Mira, where he gifts away all of his property, in this case, Halacha L'maaseh, he's gone ahead and retained something. So he's retained something for himself. Then what's the Halacha? The Gemara says, "B'shirka kolshu matanasa kayames." Ultimately, his gift endures. Now, both say, now, what does that mean? Matanaso kayames. If you take a look at the Rashbam, the lashon of the Rashbam is matanaso matana. It is 2, 4, about 8 lines into the wide lines. Matanaso matana. Hol v'shir la'atzmo harihu kimatnas bari. Hilchach bein omed mechalyo bein meis matanaso kayames. The shalomi daga misa nasan. So we'll say, the way that a gift of a Shchiv Mira works is as follows. The assumption is when a person is on their deathbed and they gift property, why are they gifting the property? Why are they giving it away? Why? Because they're going to die. So almost as if the way Halacha views the gift is a matana with a t'nai. It's really on condition, right? So Reuben's a Shchiv Mira. He gifts his property to Shimon. The understanding is that Reuben's doing this because he's dying, which then means what? What happens if Baruch Hashem, Reuben experiences a tremendous refuah sheleima? What's the halacha? The gift reverses. Reuben gets back his property, because from Reuben's perspective, I only gifted it because I thought I was going to die. Now, Baruch Hashem, I had a refuah sheleima. So therefore, again, the property goes back to Reuben. Now, on the other hand, if Reuben goes ahead and gifts property to Shimon, but retains something for himself. So if Reuben is retaining something for himself, what does that show? What does that show? That Reuben's thinking, look, I may have a refuah sheleima, I may recover from this, and therefore, again, kind of hedging my bets a little bit. I'm holding some property to myself. Therefore, again, in that kind of case, his intention is to give an unequivocal gift to Shimon. Whether Reuben recovers or doesn't recover, the gift stands. So as I see here, this model, in the case of a Shchiv Mira, if a Shchiv Mira is giving away everything, then it's understood that is a deathbed bequest, right? That is a deathbed gift, and therefore it's almost al t'nai that he dies, which means if he recovers, the gift reverses. On the other hand, if he gifts something, so let's say Reuben gifts something to Shimon, but retains something for himself, the fact that he's retaining something for himself shows that he's recognizing this possibility that he's going to recover, right? Therefore, he's holding on to property himself, which then says that the gift that he's giving to Shimon is not a gift with a t'nai, but rather, again, it's just a regular gift. It's just a regular gift, and therefore, whether he dies or whether he recovers, his gift ultimately to Shimon stands. Incredible. Lo shir kaka kol shehu. Therefore, again, if Reuben told, this is the end of the sentence, if Reuben goes ahead and if Reuben gives away all of his property, Ein matanos kayemes. Saying matanos kayemes means if Reuven gives away all of his property and then he recovers, the gift reverses. The gift reverses. The gift comes back to Reuven because it's understood that the only reason Reuven gifted this property was because he thought he was going to die, and therefore, again, halacha l'maaseh, this is considered to be a gift al t'nai, and therefore, halacha l'maaseh, it reverses in the event of recovery. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. So fine. So the Rashon goes into this a little more, but this is our purpose today. So it says the Gemara, man tana da'azlin basra umdana. So we'll say, now, interestingly enough, remember, Reuven is our shemira. What is Reuven saying when he makes this gift? What's his verbiage when he makes the gift? What is he saying? What is he saying? The answer is just saying, here, this is a gift. Remember again, the power of a shemira is that he does not have to go ahead and engage in any formal kinyanim. Right? The words of a shemira have the effect of a kinyan. So interestingly enough, Reuven himself is never saying anything, right? It's not like Reuven is going ahead and saying, I'm hereby giving you this gift, because I'm going to die. Reuven doesn't say anything. So we'll say, interestingly enough, this Mishnah is based on the concept of umdina. What's umdina? Umdina, I forgot the good English word for umdina. Like circumstantial evidence. Right? Circumstantial evidence is a better word. I had this yesterday. Okay, we're going to call it umdina. Umdina, we'll call intent. Okay. Good. So call it circumstantial intent. Let's go ahead and write circumstantial intent. In other words, if you notice in this case over here, Reuven the Shechina is on his deathbed, right? So now Reuven is not articulating a t'nai. He's not saying, Shimon, I'm hereby giving you this property on the condition that I die, but if I recover, the gift reverses. He doesn't say that. We intuit that based on his circumstantial intent. That's called umdina. So the Gemara says, who is the opinion that says that we follow umdina? Mantana doesn't give us umdina. Aram Nachman, Rabbi Shmuel ben Chaim. What does Rabbi Shmuel ben Chaim say? This is an interesting case. Haisha halach b'no l'b'dinas hayam v'shama shemis b'no v'ama v'kasav kol mechasav la'acher v'acher kach ba b'no. So watch this. Reuven has a son, or it's called Yakov. Yakov has a son, Reuven. And Reuven went overseas, and Yakov heard Nebuch that his son died. So what did Yakov do? He wrote all of his property to someone else. He gifted all of his property to someone else. And then what happened? Baruch Hashem, he was wrong. Reuven is still alive, and he comes back. What's the halacha? Matanos matano. Tanakama says, a gift is a gift is a gift. Sorry, Yakov gifted away his property. Nothing more to talk about. Rabbi Shimon ben Omer, Ein matanos matano. Shimon ben says, no, the gift is not a valid gift. Why not? For had Yakov known that Reuven was still alive, of course, Yakov would have never gifted the gift. In other words, so what do you see from here? Rabbi Manasseh follows umdina, circumstantial intent. It's clear that the only reason why Yakov gifted away the property to someone else because he thought his son was dead. Now, Baruch Hashem, it turns out his son is not dead. Therefore, halacha l'maaseh, the gift reverses. The gift reverses. Beautiful. So the Rav says, so therefore, the Gemara's first suggestion, Rav Nachman's suggestion is, our Mishnah follows Rav Shimon Manasseh, who holds of umdina. Rav Sheshes Amar, no. Rav Shimon Shazuri. It's not Rav Shimon Manasseh, rather again it's Rav Shimon Shazuri. What does Rav Shimon Shazuri say? Disanya, Barishona Hayu Omrim, in the beginning they used to say, Hayotse Bakolar, Va'amar Kisu Get Leishti, Hare Elu Yichtavu V'yitnu. So what's the interesting case over here? Let's say again, Reuven is being let out to be executed. And on his way out to be executed, he says to a group of people, or to two people, Kisvu Get Leishti, write a get for my wife. Now, the only one problem, what did he forget? He forgot to say tnu. He forgot to say give it. Right? So he said write it, but he forgot to say give it. So what's the halacha? So Shimon Shazuri said that Allah Lamaisa, the witnesses, they can write it and give it. Now we'll say why? Why? Because we understand, even though he just said write it, it's understood that what does he want? What does he want us to do? He wants us to write it and give it. I will say, by the way, why is Reuven, who's being let out to be executed, why is he interested in divorcing his wife? Why? Because again, halacha l'maaseh, the simplest answer to this would be to avoid yibum. To avoid yibum. Okay, so here's another example of umdina, of intuiting circumstantial intent. So the Chazru Lomar, Chazal added on to this, and they said, Afim Mefarish v'hayotzi b'sheyara. So we'll say this is true even if what? Even if halach l'maisa, a person is going ahead and traveling a long distance, a dangerous journey, and before he gets on the caravan, or before he gets on the boat, he says, Kisu get leishti, but he forgot to say tnu, that halach l'maisa, it works to go ahead and, we can go ahead and use umdina, and we could go ahead and write it and deliver it. Rav Shimon Shazuri Omer, Af HaMasukon. Rav Shimon Shazuri says, even someone who is like a sheleima, or someone who's in a very dangerous situation, who goes ahead and writes or says, Kisvu, we could interpret that to mean Kisvu Utnu. So the point over here is, what do you see? What do you see? The Rashbam says over here, Afam Sukkah, 3 lines up on the bottom, Karov Lemisa, Shedaito Sheyichtavu V'yitnu, the lifters Ishtamin Hayibum Niskavin. So we'll say, so you see over here that Rav Shimon Shazuri added on even Mesukkan, even someone who's in a dangerous situation, right, dangerous, about to die, we can go ahead and write and deliver the get. So we'll say, let's pause here for just a moment. So what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah spoke about the concept that if Reuven is on his deathbed, he's a sheleima, he makes a gift, and then he recovers, the gift reverses. Now again, obviously, it depends on what he gifted. That's only true if he gifted his entire estate, because then it's clear that he thinks he's going to die, that's why he's giving everything away. If he retains something for himself, any gift that he made stands, whether or not he recovers. But in a classic sheleima case, where the sheleima is gifting away all of his property, should he recover, the gift reverses and comes back to him. What's the logic behind that? Because halacha l'maisa, we understand that it's almost like a gift made al t'nai, that the sheleima assumes he's going to die, and therefore his gift is predicated on his eventual / immediate, or very, very soon to occur, death. So therefore, even though he never articulates that, we intuit that. So who is the opinion that holds that we base transactions, or we interpret transactions based on circumstantial intent? So what we call in halacha, umdina. So two different opinions. Rav Nachman attributes it to Rav Shimon ben Menasya, and Rav Sheshes attributes it to Rav Shimon Shazuri. Now the Gemara just asks why each opinion doesn't follow the view of the other. For Rav Nachman, my time lo mokim like Rav Shimon Shazuri. Rav Nachman, who holds like Rav Shimon ben Menasya, why does he not say that's Rav Shimon Shazuri? Shiny Hasan Amar Kisvu. Because Rav Nachman will say the case of Rav Shimon Shazuri will say is not a case of umdina. It's not a case of umdina. What did the husband say in the get case? What did he say? He said kisvu. Okay, he forgot to say tnu. He'll say when a husband says write a get, what does he mean? What does he mean? Right? You don't need umdina for that, right? In other words, there's no point in writing a get if it's not going to be delivered. That's not umdina. That's just okay. He didn't get out a full sentence, but lamaisa, you don't need umdina over there. So Rav Sheshes, my time alone, welcome look at Rav Shimon Menasya. So Rav Sheshes holds Rav Shimon Shazuri by the get case. Why does he not hold Rav Shimon Menasya? Rav Shimon Menasya by the case of where the son went overseas. So the Meir said, listen to this. My time alone, welcome look at Rav Shimon Menasya. Umdina demuchach shiny. So we'll say, because he holds the case of Rav Shimon Menasya is what we call an umdina demuchach. See, I will say, in the world of umdinas, in the world of circumstantial intent, there's different levels. So there's something called an umdina demuchach. An umdina demuchach means it's almost explicitly clear, right? When Yakov's son Reuven goes overseas, and Yakov hears that Reuven died, and after he hears that Reuven died, he goes in and he gives his property to someone else. It is so clear to us what is happening over here. Yaakov thinks that his heir died, and therefore he's assigning the property to someone else. He would have never done this had he known that Reuven is alive. That's called an umdina demuchach. You know, there's umdina, which is like circumstantial intent, which maybe you could interpret in different ways. And then there's umdina demuchach, which is explicitly clear circumstantial intent. Okay, so the Gemara says, Man tana lahadu tana rabbanan. So who is the author of this? So I will say, here's what's interesting, by the way. Right? So what's interesting is, everyone agrees that the Mishnah, our Mishnah, is working based on the concept of umdina, right? Because remember again, the sheleima at no point in time is ever explicitly articulating, I'm giving away my property because I'm about to die. He never says that. Now obviously, if he says that, there's nothing to talk about, right? If Reuven's on his deathbed and he says, I know I'm going to die, therefore I'm gifting away my property, it is clear that he's only giving away the property because he's going to die, and therefore, if Amir Hashem, he should have it, refuah sheleima, the gift reverses. The chiddush of the Mishnah is that even though the Umdana never says this, right? The Umdana never articulates any of this. But it's understood. We intuit this into the transaction, that the motivation for why he's giving this gift is because he's going to die. And therefore, if he recovers, the gift reverses. So the Mishnah clearly is operating under the principle of Umdana. So now our only question was, who is it based on? Okay, so now we have two different opinions who both espouse the concept of Umdana, Rosh Shazuri and Rosh Menasya. Beautiful. Now the Gemara says, Man Tanalahu Tanabanas. Who is the author of the following opinion? Hari Shahaya, interesting case here. Hari Shahaya Chol Muto Bamita Va'amrulo Nichasecha Lami. So listen to this. Ruvain's in his deathbed. Right? Ruvain's in his deathbed. And they ask him, Ruvain, who do you want your property to go to? And Ruvain responds with the following. Both say top of Kuf Mem Zayin 147a. And Ruvain responds, Domali Shieshli Ben Aksha. Domali Shieshli Ben. Domali Shieshli Ben. You know, I heard that I have a son. Obviously not a very close family, right? I heard that I have a son. Rashi said that Rashbam says, Domek Kolomar Kimiduma Hayisi Shieshli Ben Aksha, right? Domali Shieshli Ben. Akshav She'enli Ben Nechasen Ploni. So essentially what Ruvain says like this. I heard that I had a son, right? I had a son. Now I heard that son died. That son passed away, and therefore because I have no son, Nechasai Leploni, my property should go to Shimon. Okay? Or Hayachola Mutabamita, Ruvain, right? Ruvain the Shimon was dying in bed. Vamrulo, and they asked him, Nechasav Lemi, Ruvain, who do you want your property to go to? Amr Lahem, so he said to them, Domesh Ishtimu Uberes. You know, my wife was pregnant, and obviously, again, had that pregnancy gone to full term, my wife would have birthed a child. My property would have gone to that child. Achshav she'ein ishti me'uberes. But now, my wife is not pregnant. Nechasai leploni. I hereby assign my property to Shimon. Okay? That wasn't, interestingly enough, what happened. Strange turn of events. Benodalo sheyesh laben. O shahaise ishto me'uberes. And then it turns out that what? It turns out that Reuven was mistaken. His son is alive, or his wife is still pregnant. So in other words, you see what happened over here? He's on his deathbed. I heard I had a son, but my son died. Or I heard my wife was pregnant, but unfortunately she miscarried the pregnancy. And therefore I assigned my property to Shimon, a third party. And then it turns out, no. He does have a son who's alive. His wife is still pregnant, Baruch Hashem. So what's the halacha? Ein matana so matana. The gift to Shimon is not a valid gift. Which I will say again, Umdana, right? Because it's clear to us based on circumstantial intent. And again, this is even a little bit stronger because here, he really is articulating it, right? Even though he's not articulating it explicitly, right? He's not saying, I would have given the gift to my son, right? But now that my son is dead, I'm giving it to Shimon. But again, it's almost like he's thinking out loud, right? But as he's thinking out loud, we could intuit what his circumstantial intent is. Had his son been alive, he would have given it to his son. Had he known that his wife was still pregnant, he would have given it to the unborn fetus. Or when we can't give it to unborn fetus, you saw that is. But he would have given it to that child when it was born. So therefore the Gemara says we intuit circumstantial intent, and therefore again, the matana to Shimon is not a matana. So who is that? Whose opinion is that? Lema, Reb Shimon ben Menassi. So that would be Reb Shimon ben Menassi, velo Rabbanan. And that's the Rabbanan. To which the Gemara says, no. Afilu tema Rabbanan, doma shiny. So the Rabbanan will say, so the Gemara says, so Shimon Menassi, because Rabbi Shimon Menassi holds of Umdina, and not the Rabbanan who don't hold of Umdina. To which the Gemara says, no, this case is different. This case could even be the Rabbanan. Why could it be the Rabbanan? Because they will say there's something different in this case. What's different in this case? One word. What's the one word? Doma. It appears to me. The fact that Ruvain is kind of going through this process, right? In other words, remember again, he's on his deathbed. They come to him, they say, Ruvain, who do you want your property to go to? And Ruvain says, I thought I used to have a son. Now that I no longer have a son, the property should go to Shimon. So I will say, even the Rabbanon who don't normally hold of Umdina say the fact that he's talking this out indicates to us what his clear intent is, right? It appears, the Lasha Doma, it appears to me, it's clear that he's saying to us, although he's not saying it explicitly, but he's saying that if my son were alive, it would go to my son. Now that my son's not alive, it'll go to Shimon. So which is clear that when his son turns out to be alive, the property should, or the gift should reverse from Shimon. Okay. V'dikarila, my karila. So I'll say, it seems to be pretty clear that even if you don't hold of Umdina, clearly this would be a case where we recognize what the intent of Ruvain is. So what's the Havamina? So the Gemara says, Sarehu de Kamitkar. So I might have thought that when Ruvain is talking this out, maybe Ruvain is not telling us this information for transactional purposes, but rather what is Ruvain doing? Ruvain is kind of just thinking out loud. He's talking about his pain. I had a son. My son passed away. My wife was pregnant. The pregnancy was lost. So maybe he's just kind of talking out loud a little bit, but lav dafka in any type of legal ramification or repercussion. So Kamash Malon, the Gemara says, good. Kamash Malon, no, that we understand that really what he's articulating over here is his intent. His intent. And therefore, in this kind of case, even if you don't hold of Umdina, everyone would agree that halacha l'maisa, the gift does reverse. Incredible. So the Gemara, I suppose, says therefore halacha l'maisa. And by the way, this Mishnah is also codified halacha l'maisa. That essentially, when a shchiv mira goes ahead and makes a gift, it is understood that gift is made al t'nai. It's made with a condition. What's the condition? That the gift is valid if I die, but if I recover, the gift reverses. But even that's only true when the shchiv mira is gifting away everything, because the fact that he's giving away everything shows that he thinks he's going to die. If he retains something for himself, that means that he holds that there's a possibility that he's going to recover. If he holds this possibility that he's going to recover, then the gift is not given al t'nai, but rather, again, it's a regular gift, and therefore stands even if he recovers. Now, even though the shchiv mira is not explicitly articulating this t'nai, we nevertheless circumstantially intuit, or we intuit his circumstantial intent. What is that called in halacha? That's called umdina. So we accept the concept of umdina. Two different sources or two different opinions who both hold the umdina of Shem Menasya and Shem Ben Shizuri. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. That's why halacha l'maisa. Leib said the Gemara asks a fascinating question. Amrav Zera Amrav Minayin Lamatna Shchimina Shimina Torah. So I say, so now the Gemara says, by the way, how do you know? Right? We've been doing this now for a while. We're speaking about this, that a shchiv mira has incredible transactional power, right? That divrei shchiv mira kiksuvin v'chimsurim damu. Right? The words of a shchiv mira are as if they are written and given over. So by the way, the Gemara says, from where do we know that the matana, that a shchiv mira has the ability to convey property minatora midoraisa. So that this is a biblical right that the shchiv mira has. We know some shenemar va'avartem esnachaloso lebito. Pasuk says, actually, interestingly enough, by the inheritance of a daughter, va'avartem esnachaloso lebito yesh lecha ha'avara acheres shehi kizu. Now, both say the pasuk itself is written in a longer form, right? It could have just said nachaloso lebito. Right, the inherited man doesn't have a son; the inheritance goes to his daughter. The fact that it writes it in an elongated form indicates to us that you can make another drasha from this phrase. Yesh lacha avara achar shikazu. There's another transfer of property that is like this one. Ve'ezo zu, and what type of transfer are we talking about? Matna shchiv mira. So we'll say from the long form of this pasuk, we can see there's another form of transference of property. What is that? The matana of shchiv mira. The shchiv mira also has the ability to transfer. I will say, remember again, because it's a matana, this matana could also disrupt the normal progression of inheritance law. Right? The shchiv mira could do anything. So from here you see the shchiv mira can go ahead and transfer property. Okay? Rav Nachman Amra Baravu. Amihacha from here, unesatem es nachaloso lo'achiv. Once again, I will say this is talking about the idea that brothers can inherit as well. But once again, this pasuk is written in the long form. It just could have said nachalasa la'achiv. Why does it write it in the long form? Once again, yesh lecha nesina achara shehi kizu, to teach us that there is another act of giving like this one. Ve'izo zu, and ultimately again, what type of giving is that? Zu matna shchiv mira. Shabbos says, so again, interestingly enough, halacha l'maisa, from both of these psukim, the fact that they're written in the elongated form gives us the ability to make a drasha from them. Okay, but there's another type of havar, there's another type of giving over, which is the giving over of shemira. Rav Nachman, my time Amar me'avartem. So why does Rav Nachman, who learns out from unesatem es nachaloso, why does he not learn out from havartem? Because he needs havartem for Rabbi. What does Rabbi say? The sign your Rabbi Omer, v'kulon nemra bahem nesina, v'kan nemra havara. Normally the lashon by inheritance, whenever the Torah talks about inheritance, Torah uses lashon of nesina, of giving. Yet when it comes to the inheritance of a daughter, the Torah uses a lashon of ha'avara, of almost like a passing over, a moving over. Why? Because we'll say, what's the challenge? When a daughter inherits, not a challenge, but what's the reality? When a daughter inherits, it's very possible that property will be moved over from tribe to tribe. Hoyel ubina ubayla yarshin osa. We saw this before, because since halacha l'maisa, again, when a woman dies, her daughter or her husband or her son inherit her, and it's quite possible that her husband and her son are from a different tribe than her own family. Therefore, their inheritance, by definition, could potentially move over tribal property from one shevet to another shevet. That's why the Torah, when it talks about the inheritance of a daughter, uses the lashon of v'havartem, a moving over of inheritance. Okay, incredible. So Mar goes weiter. Rabbi Zera, first wide line of Osek Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Rabbi Zera, my time Amar me unesatem. So Rabbi Zera, why does he not learn it out from unesatem, which is the inheritance of the brother? Archei dekrahu. As Rabbi Zera just feels the pasuk is just written in the normal fashion. It doesn't really leave itself open for a drasha. Okay. Rabbi Nashe Bram B'Yirmiyah Amriach. So says, interestingly enough, so whereas they differ on the sources, interestingly enough, so far, the prevalent school of thought is that matnas shemira, the ability of someone on their deathbed to convey property, just verbally, is a da'araisa. So some more sources. So Amar Nashe Bram B'Yirmiyah Amriach. Benyamin Chaim Pesach. So we'll say here, this is incredible. So now, this is not from Chumash, this is from Navi, but still a scriptural source. So it was in those days, Chizkiyahu was going to die. So what happened? Vayavo elav Yeshayahu ben Amos Hanavi. So who came to visit him? Yeshayahu ben Amos. And Vayomer elav Kamar Hashem. He says to him, so Hashem says, so Yeshayahu says, Hashem has commanded, Tzav leveisecha, command your household, Kimes ata, because you are going to die. So not the best etiquette for a Bikur Cholim visit, right? But nevertheless, again, so as I remember again, we know the backdrop to this story, right? This is the famous Maisa. Why is Chizkiyahu dying? Because Chizkiyahu refused to marry. He refused to marry and have children because he saw prophetically that if he had a son, his son would be a tremendous rasha. So he decided not to marry. So Yeshayahu the Navi comes to him and says, you're going to die. So remember again, the Gemara Musha Chana highlights the whole story over here. So Yeshayahu says you're going to die. Chizkiyahu says why? Yeshayahu says because you refused to marry and have a child. So Chizkiyahu says, I'll tell you why I did that, because so prophetically my son was going to be a rasha. So remember again, Yeshayahu responds to him and he says, why are you getting involved in God's plans? Your job is to be normal, get married, try to have kids. That's your job. Don't try to run the world. Leave that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Chizkiyahu says to Yeshayahu, and he says, Yeshayahu, I heard that you have a single daughter, so why don't you give me your daughter as a wife? Yeshayahu says, I already told you, you're going to die. Too late, sorry. Right, missed the opportunity, you missed your prime, you're going to die. So Chizkiyahu turns back and says something amazing. He says, I am a descendant of David HaMelech. And he says, I have a Mesorah from my Alter Zeder, from David HaMelech. And what's the Mesorah? Afilu cherev chada munachas al tzavaro sha'adam al yimana es atzam min arachem. The Mesorah I have from my Alter Zeder, from David HaMelech is, even if there is a sharp sword against your neck, don't give up. Isn't that incredible? That the grandchildren of Devorah Eliana, if there's one thing that they retain from their grandfather, is the yesod, don't give up. Don't give up. No matter how difficult or how bleak things look in life, don't give up. So Yeshayahu is very moved by Chizkiyahu's words. He gives Chizkiyahu his daughter in marriage, and they have a son. That son was a man by the name of Menashe. Menashe was one of the longest serving monarchs. He reigned for 55 years. For 33 of them, he was a Rasha. For 22 of them, he did tshuva, right? And again, he died about tshuva, which was incredible. But unfortunately, the first part of his reign was a very dark time for Klal Yisrael. In any event, the point over here is, I would say, just also to highlight how beautiful it is. Sometimes the things you do in life can inspire future generations. We have to recognize that we set a tremendous example for our children and our grandchildren and how like great-grandchildren through what we say and also through what we do. Sometimes like we go through life and we do things and we think that it doesn't matter, but the truth is always besides Cheshire Baruch Hu is watching what we do. There's so many sets of familial eyes on us also, and you never know how our family learns from the way that we behave and what it is that we do. A tremendous yisod. So the Gemara goes weiter. The point over here is that the Gemara is quoting this is to show us v'lo tehei tzava v'lo tichya. I'm sorry, kimei sata v'lo tichya b'tzava ba'alma. So what do you see from here? You see that Yeshayahu says to Chizkiyahu, command your household. Command your household. So what do you see from here? That Chizkiyahu has the ability to convey property or to do whatever he has to do just through what? Tzava, through verbal declaration. So from here you see that the words of a sheleima affect halachic realities. Rabbi Cheskel learns it from here. V'achitofel ra kilo nesta etzaso. So we'll say Achitofel. So a little bit, just quick background. Remember, Avshalom, the son of David HaMelech, rebels against his father. When that rebellion occurred, some of David's closest advisors went and followed Avshalom. Amongst them, Achitofel. Achitofel was one of the advisors of David HaMelech. He went and he followed Avshalom. Now, I will say, now understand what Achitofel gave Avshalom. Rashbam brings this down. Achitofel gave Avshalom a very important piece of advice. When David HaMelech was on the run, Achitofel said to Avshalom, crush him now. Crush David now. Because if David has a chance to regroup, you're going to lose. Avshalom did not listen to the advice of Achitofel, and when David ran away, he just allowed David to escape. So Achitofel saw that the rebellion was doomed. Now obviously he understood that when the rebellion was doomed, everyone who participated in the rebellion would be doomed as well. So what happened? There was an incredible Gemara. Achitofel ra'a kilo nasta etzaso. So Achitofel saw that Avshalom did not listen to his advice. So he saddled his donkey. Vayelech el beiso el iro. He went back home to his family. Vayitzav el beiso. He commanded his household. Vayechanek. And he killed himself. Achitofel took his own life because he recognized that he made a terrible, terrible mistake, and he thought he was beyond forgiveness for that mistake. Now, for our purposes, what do you see from here? So we'll say this is fascinating. Now, the Gemara is looking at Achitofel almost as like a Schiv Mira. Achitofel knew that he was going to take his own life. And what did he do? He commanded his family. So in other words, he made verbal designations, verbal gifts. So, and it worked. The Gemara says, "B'tzava ba'alma." So this is quite interesting, because the Gemara again compares Achitofel to a shchim, because that's like a shchimira, knows that he's going to die. Achitofel knew that he was going to take his own life. And therefore the Gemara uses this as a proof that halacha l'maisa, tzavas shchimira ultimately works. Okay, so we'll say, we'll say now an incredible Gemara. Achitofel commanded his sons regarding three things. Number one, al tiyu b'machlokes. So number one, do not be in a state of machlokes. We'll define what this means in just a moment. Val timru b'malchus beis David. Do not go ahead and rebel against the malchus of David HaMelech. In other words, don't rebel against David. The Yom Tov Shalat Seres Barur Zaruchitim. And literally again, if the Yom Tov of Shavuos, if it's clear outside, that's a good omen. Make sure to go ahead and plant wheat. So first of all, there's so much profundity over here. If you think about this idea of al tiyu b'machlokes, so the Maharsha comments on this. Because if you think about it, the lashon over here is, what is he trying to say? So we read it, I think there's a case saying, don't enter into machlokes. There's a better way to say that, right? The Maharsha points out, he could have just said, al tachloku. don't engage in machlokes. What does it mean? Al tiyu b'machlokes. Don't be in machlokes. So the Maharsha himself says something so beautiful. He says, "Lefi shelapamim lo husar adam milachlok im chavero." Sometimes a person is not careful and gets thrown into machlokes. Kisha avra lavaderach aval amar atiyu osin garme hamachlokes. So what it means, atiyu machlokes means try your best not to create machlokes. And I both say, sometimes machlokes finds you. Machlokes finds you, but do your best to try to avoid atiyu b'machlokes means try your best to be the kind of people that are machlokes averse. So as I was thinking that perhaps there's also another interpretation of this. Atiyu b'machlokes means don't be in machlokes. Right? Sometimes you can't avoid the fact that machlokes started. But every single person has a choice about whether or not to perpetuate machlokes. In other words, I can't necessarily decide, or I don't necessarily have a choice as to when discord begins, right? Someone starts up, someone creates machlokes, I might be drawn into it, and I may not have a choice. But every single person has a choice. When you're in that machlokes, do you go ahead and escalate or de-escalate? Do you perpetuate or do you go ahead and hit the brakes? That you always have the choice. That's what it means. I'll tell you, b'machlokes. Sometimes I can't choose if there is machlokes, but I could choose whether or not I remain in that machlokes or not. Now let's say it is such a profound yisod. All of us have the choice of de-escalation or escalation. And that is true. This happens all the time in so many of our life relationships. I may not choose the fight. It may just occur around me, machlokes around me, but do you escalate or do you de-escalate? That is your choice. That's what it means. I'll tell you, b'machlokes. You're right. Ideally, don't start machlokes. Right? That's what the Maharsha says. I'll tell you machlokes, Maharsha understands means don't be the kind of person who starts machlokes. True. But what do you do about the fact that sometimes they get drawn in? I'll tell you machlokes, don't be the one who escalates. Don't be the one who perpetuates, but rather find the koach to hit the brakes, find the koach to de-escalate. Now, I will say this last piece, by the way. So the next part, Al Timrdu Machos Beis David, pretty solid advice, right? Do not rebel against the house of David HaMelech, right? They're chosen by God. Not a good idea to engage in machlokes, and obviously Achitofel is giving them first-hand advice. What about this last piece? The Yom Tov Sha'at Seres Baru Zaruchitim. So we'll say, so on the most basic level, this is a piece of agricultural advice. Right? If the weather is nice on Shavuos, the weather is clear on Shavuos, that is a good omen for the wheat crop for the coming year. Plant wheat that day. I would say, but remember, think about this from yesterday's daf. What did we learn in yesterday's daf? What's chita? Well, actually, it was technically 2 days ago, but we did it yesterday, right? So again, what's chita? What did the Gemara say? What's chita? Chita's Gemara. Chita's Gemara. Shavuos says, so perhaps what the Gemara is saying is like this, and this is a tremendous yisod. The Gemara says, Yom Tov Shel Atzeres Barur. If you have a day where you're having clarity in Torah, right? Atzeres is Shavuos. Shavuos is Matan Torah. If you're having a good day in your Ruchnius, Yom Tov, you're having a Yom Tov, you're having a good day, in Atzeres, in your Ruchnius, what do you do if you're having a good day in your Ruchnius? The Gemara says, Zaru Chitin. Plant even more wheat. Learn more Gemara. Learn more Torah. Ride the wave. There are moments that we experience of incredible and intense spirituality. The problem is that what sometimes happens is the wave of spirituality comes, wave of inspiration comes, and we don't do anything with it. We don't plug it in. We don't plug it in anywhere. I don't find a way to perpetuate. It's almost like these bookends, right? The first thing Achitofel is saying is, if you find yourself in the midst of machlokes, do not escalate, do not perpetuate. The other bookend to that is, if you find yourself in the midst of a spiritual awakening, plant wheat, learn Gemara, learn Torah, ride that wave, do something with it. So many times in life we're inspired, and it's just easy come, easy go. We just don't plug it into anything. If you're in a good moment in life, and you're feeling inspired, and you're feeling good, plant more, do more, ride that wave, because at some point in time, the feeling goes away. Ubi Yom Tov, if you're having a good day, a day of inspiration, Shalat Saras, like a Shavuos, like a Matan Torah, Barur, and it's clear you have such personalistic, spiritual clarity, Zaruchitin, do more, plant more. Life is all about pushing ourselves. And in these moments of inspiration, which come, again, for some of us, they come more frequently, less frequently, ride the wave. Do it. Do something with it. Don't allow it to simply dissipate. Incredible. Marzucha Amar. Bala Intimar. So Marzucha will say, so again, obviously, there's a literal understanding of this as well, which is an agricultural understanding of this, which is if it's a clear day on Shavuos, that's a good omen for the wheat season. Marzucha says, no, it doesn't mean clear. It's not barur, it's balul, cloudy. Cloudy weather is actually a better omen for the season. Itmar Aminar Doi Mished Rabbi Yakov Lo Barar Mamish Lo Balo Mamish. It doesn't mean literally cloudy or literally sunny or literally sunny, literally cloudy. Ela Afilu Balol V'Ruach Tsevonis Min Hashafto Zehu Barar. Rather, even if it's a cloudy day, but there's a northern wind that is blowing, that's considered to be a clear day for the purposes of wheat planting. Incredible. Amar Rabbi Abba Rav Ashi. Anon ad Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi masnin Allah. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi, this is beautiful. Matzi Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag, on the last day of Sukkot. So Matzi Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag, on the last day of Sukkot. Hakol Sof. So remember again, Sukkot is the rainy season, right? So again, even though we don't want rain over the course of Sukkot, but remember again on Shmini Atzeres, that's when we recite Tefillah of Geshem. That the prayer for rain. So on the last day of Sukkot, right? Matzei of Sukkot, Hakol Sof in the Ashram Rachba is so beautiful. Everyone would look at the smoke coming off of the Mizbeach. Right? So remember again, the Ma'aracha, there was a constant fire burning on the Mizbeach. The Ish Tamin Tukadbo, there was a constant fire, and there was obviously smoke always coming up from the Ma'aracha, from the pyre on the Mizbeach. Watch this. So on Matzei Yom Tov Achron, so now it's the beginning of the rainy season. So now, again, everybody wants to see what kind of rainy season is it going to be this year. So everybody looked at the smoke coming off of the Ma'aracha. Nata klapei tzafon. So if the smoke went towards the north, what does that mean? That means there was a southern wind. Right? If it went towards north, there was a southern wind. So aniyim smechim. So the poor were happy. Why? Ubali batim atzavin, and the balabatim, the balabatim were sad. Why? Mimnei shegish mishana merubin uperos markivin. So I said because that showed that there was going to be a lot of rain that year. Now a lot of rain is good, but also a lot of rain is problematic. Why? Because that means there's a lot of moisture. When there's a lot of moisture, you can't store produce. If you can't store produce, that means you have to sell everything. If you have to sell everything, that means you're flooding the market. And if you're flooding the market, it means low prices. Low prices. So the balabatim aren't happy with that because the maisa less profit. The poor are incredibly happy for that because that means lower prices. Not the klapi darum. If the smoke shifted southward, then aniyim atzam balabatim smechem. Then the aniyim are sad, but the balabatim are happy. Why? Because that shows there will be little rain. I will say now that Hashem points out over here, it doesn't mean little rain or less rain. It means there will be more than enough rain to produce proper bounty, but not too much rain so that there's too much moisture to store the produce. So that means you could store produce. And we'll say, obviously, with stored produce, what can you do? Timed release. Timed release, right? What the balabatim want is they don't want to flood the market. What they want to do is be able to hold on to produce and release it strategically throughout the season. So peros mishtamrin, and right, because ultimately, again, that means they could store produce. Store produce means higher prices. Balabatim are happy, aniyim are sad. Not a klapi mizrach. What if it blew towards the east? Hakol smechin. Everybody was happy because apparently, again, I will say towards the east is like the right balance. That just enough rain that you can't store too much, but enough. But again, not too much moisture that you can store some, and therefore, again, prices are high enough to make a profit, but also low enough that everything is still affordable. Beautiful. The Gemara says, not a klapi mizrach, hakol smechin, good. Klapi marav, hakol tzav. Klapi mizrach, hakol smechin. Klapi marav, hakol atzavin. If the smoke blew towards the west, everybody would be upset. Why? Because that showed that there would be a lack of rain. Now, obviously, if there's a lack of rain, everyone's upset because that means, again, not enough produce. Not enough produce means so the balabatim aren't making money or enough money. And obviously, for the poor, that's going to be much higher prices and inability, food scarcity. Or many of the Gemara is the kasha, mizrach as the olam yafa. Ma'aravas the Olam Kasha. But we learned that the eastern wind is always good, and Ma'aravas, the western wind, is always bad. So the Gemara says, Ruach Tzifonis Yafa Lechitim, B'Shah Sheviu Shlish. So ultimately, again, northern wind is good for wheat at a time that they have grown to 1/3 of their maturity. V'Kasha Lezesim, B'Shah She'anitzu. And it's difficult for the olives when they've already blossomed. Ruach Dromis, Kasha lechitin b'shah sheviu shlish v'yafal lezesim b'shah she'anitzu. And on the other hand, a southern wind is difficult for wheat when they've reached 1/3 of their maturity, but good for olives when they have begin to blossom. And the easy way to remember this, the other way to remember this is the shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash was in the north, and the menorah was in the south. Now, what does that mean? I will say, because remember, the shulchan, bread, which comes from wheat, was in the north, which means northern wind is good for wheat, and the menorah, olive oil, which comes from olives, obviously, was in the south. Southern wind, good for olives. So the Gemara says, it's not a contradiction. Hai marbi didei, v'hai marbi didei. Lokashya halon v'haluhu. So I'll say, so again, hai marbi didei, v'hai marbi didei, which literally means this direction is good for what it needs, and this direction is good for what it needs. So it's no contradiction. Halon v'haluhu. So I'll say, there's no contradiction in which winds are beneficial. It's talking about two different geographic orientations. One is talking about Eretz Yisrael, and one is talking about Bavel. If you take a look at the Rashbam, 3 lines up from the bottom. Halon libnei Bavel hashochel memitzula va'artzenu meluchleches ve'ina tzricha lematar kolkach lididan ma'isina braisa basraisa shema'arav es kasha lefi shemamateres yoser midai libnei Bavel. Umizrach is yafeh. So we'll say Bavel had a lot more natural moisture. So Bava, they did not need as much rain in order for the crops to be bountiful. And in fact, in Bavel, even regular rainfall would be detrimental. There's too much rain. So in Bavel, the Brisa that said that halacha l'maisa, that the ruach mizrachis was always good and the dromis was bad, that's for Bavel. However, ubraisa kamaisa demasni ipcha luhu libnei Eretz Yisrael she'arsim gavot shricha lematar harbe. But the first Brisa about Eretz Yisrael. So we'll say, so again, the two brises which are talking about the benefit or the detriment of different winds are not contradictory. Bavel and Eretz Yisrael needed two very different things. Eretz Yisrael needs a lot more rainfall. Bavel needs a lot less rainfall. Okay, beautiful. So let's go back there. Says the Gemara, Tanya b'Shal Omer, Yom Tov Shalat Zeres Baror Simya Falochal Hashanas. We'll say along these same lines, very beautiful. So Yom Tov Shalat Zeres Shavuos. If Shavuos is clear, right? Shavuos is a clear day. That is a good siman for the rest of the year. But remember again, Shavuos represented the beginning of the wheat season. So if Shavuos was clear, right, Shavuos had good weather, that was a good omen for the rest of the year. Amar Rav Zvid, Hayom Akam D'rei Shas. Listen to this. So Rav Zvid said on Rosh Hashanah, I chamim kulei shasa chamima. If Rosh Hashanah is hot, it's a hot day Rosh Hashanah, that means that it's going to be a warm year. I karir kulei shasa karira. If Rosh Hashanah is cool, right, or cold, that's a siman that the rest of the year is going to be cold as well. I will say, by the way, you can understand this as well. You see this motif, by the way, with Rosh Hashanah, not just with actual physical temperature, but we see how what happens on Rosh Hashanah is a microcosm for the entire year, right? We know that the minhag brought down about not to take a nap on Rosh Hashanah, right? Why? Because again, a person doesn't want to have a sleepy year. We do so many simanim, right? Why do we do all the simanim? Simna Milson Rosh Hashanah. Why all of these significant omens? All of that is to set a tone for Rosh Hashanah. Now, what does that mean? Literally, what happens on Rosh Hashanah mirrors the rest of the year? Maybe yes, maybe no. But I'll tell you what it does mean. What everyone will agree it does mean is, whenever you start something new, the way you start sets the tone for the rest of the year. Sets the tone for the rest of the endeavor. So if a person starts Rosh Hashanah strong, does that mean the rest of the year is going to be strong? Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's certainly a better probability that you're going to be successful if you start strong. So you can even understand this over here. The Gemara says, "I chamim kulei shasa chamima." If Rosh Hashanah is hot, what does hot mean? If Rosh Hashanah is on fire, if Rosh Hashanah is inspired, right? If Rosh Hashanah is intense, then that sets a wonderful beginning for intensity and spiritual fire for the rest of the year. If Rosh Hashanah is cold, right, a little bit spiritually apathetic or indifferent, then unfortunately, again, there's a flawed start. And where there's a flawed start, unfortunately, again, that type of coldness, indifference, and apathy could spread throughout the years. Rabbi, I just want to point out something incredible. So, this Gemara is teaching us that everything goes by the beginning. So I just want to point out that this is not just a din in Rosh Hashanah, this is a din in our daily lives. So much of how my day goes depends on how I start it. Depends on how I start it. And if you start strong, does it mean you're going to have a fully successful day? Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's certainly a better probability that if you start on fire, if you start strong, if you start with intensity, people say, we start early in the morning. And the truth is, there's different ways you could get started over here. You could drag yourself in. You could drag yourself in, which sometimes just have no choice but to drag ourselves in, right? And running behind. And also, just to be honest, there's a moment again, this is not even Musha. This is just, if I'm late to something, by definition, the experience is not the same. And the rest of the time is catch up. And the intensity is never there. It's just not. You're doing your own thing, whatever it is. Let's say, sometimes it's about starting strong. And if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to do it right. If I'm going to do it with hislavos. Do it with commitment. Do it right. Make it happen. If I'm already making the commitment to do something, then make it happen in all the right ways. Because if there's heat, if there's passion, if there's intensity, it changes everything afterwards. If there's coldness, apathy, lackadaisicalkeit, right? Then sometimes that just follows me throughout the rest of it also. So much of life is just getting things started in the right way. And if I get it moving in the right way, so many beautiful and incredible things follow afterwards. And if I get things kind of started it started, it's apathy is the wrong word, because it's not chashon apathy, but that coldness, that lack of passion sometimes follows me into the rest of my day as well. If I'm going to start something, start it strong, because that strength, that intensity, that heat follows me through the rest of my day, through the rest of my year, into everything else that I'm doing. Incredible. So who cares? In other words, this is interesting that if Rosh Hashanah is cold, Rosh Hashanah is hot, and then the rest of the year is going to be cold, the rest of the year is going to be hot. What does that matter? It says beautiful. On the days, l'tfilaso shel Kohen Gadol. This is beautiful, I say. So it matters to the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. What's the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol? Tap Rashbam, l'tfilaso shel Kohen Gadol. Shaya mispalo b'yom kippurim, shetiyeh shana zu geshuma u'shechuna. Remember again, we actually reference this. The Gemara Masechus discusses this idea. There's a shortened version of the Tefillah of the Kohen Gadol in the Chazar Sashatz of Musaf on Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol would daven. He would daven in between the curtains of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and in it he would daven and he would say, and he would talk about the material needs of Klal Yisrael for the coming year. So it's incredible. So depending on what the weather was on Rosh Hashanah would dictate what the rest of the day was going to be. So if it was cold on Rosh Hashanah, he would say, we need a little bit more heat this year. It was hot on Rosh Hashanah, right? He would say, we need a little bit more coldness. So depending on what the weather was, that would go ahead, which is incredible, by the way, because, I don't know, I never thought about this before. We always kind of think that the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol was static, right? There was a script. Kamashal, the Gemara says, no, there wasn't a script. This was a real heartfelt tefillah that was for the needs of the cloud based on where they were. V'rava Amrav Nachman. So Rabbi says, so remember again, our primary sugi over here was all about the matana b'shchimira. And is it d'oraisa or d'rabanan? So now we've been going with the idea up until now that it's always been d'oraisa. So now Rabbi said, matana shchimira midrabanan. Ba'alma. So no, matana shchimira is midrabanan. It's not d'oraisa, it's midrabanan. Shema titrof daito alav. So in other words, this is not a doraisa. The matnas shemira is a rabbinic construct. Why did Chazal go ahead and do this? Why did they do it? Because they were nervous. Again, Rashbam has a couple of different girsos as to what this means, but we're just going to go with the bottom one. Chazal were concerned that if the shemira didn't have an easy way to go ahead and transfer property, that shema titrov daito alav. it would make him even more upset and exacerbate the severity of his situation. So in order to allow the shechemira to do what he has to do with minimal effort or pain, so the rabbis came along and created this construct called matna shechemira. Mi amar Rav Nachman Hakid. Rav Nachman really say this. V'amar Rav Nachman afagav dam Shmuel locher shtarchol v'chabeiro chazo umachlo machol ba'afilu yoresh machol. So we'll say, okay, so this is an interesting halacha over here. Let's at least begin this, and then we'll pick up with this tomorrow. Rabbi said by tomorrow. Sorry, we'll get there. So let's say, so remember again, so now, according to this approach of Rav Meir and Achman, halacha l'maisa, matna shechemira is not a d'oraisa. Instead, matna shechemira is a d'rabanan. So the Gemara says, now, did Shmuel really say this? Because we'll say there is the following halacha. The halacha says as follows. Let's talk about this concept, then we'll pick up with this tomorrow, Mir Hashem. If I sell a debt to someone, right? I lent Ruvain money. And then I go, so Ruvain owes me $1,000. I sell the note to Shimon. So I say, interestingly enough, even though I sold the note, I have the ability to forgive the debt, which is a little bit crazy, right? But the logic is behind that, because at the end of the day, as much as I assigned collection of the note, I am still the lender, and therefore I retain the ability to forgive that note whenever. So the Gemara says, we'll pick up answer with this case tomorrow. But again, switching gears now from the idea that the matan of a shechemira is d'oraisa, to ultimately switching gears to the fact that it is a d'rabanan in order to benefit the mental health of the shechemira. Stop over here today. Resolution tomorrow. Shkoyach. All right, Chavran Zoom, have a great day, everyone.